it was a stream element request by Drew. Thank you, Drew. I don't know if it was a request from this stream or for like the second channel, the clip channel, but I appreciate it. So this is Law, Order and Punishment in Medieval Time by the History Squad, which I've watched a video about, well, from this channel before. It was about like a prince who got an arrow to the head and a sergeant who made like an invention to be able to pull out the arrowhead that was stuck in his face. It was very gruesome. It was something from like the 100-Year War, I think. So very gruesome, yeah, to say the very least. But yeah, so we're gonna check this one out. Drew, thank you for the stream element request. Let's watch it.
Hi, my name's Kevin Hicks. Welcome to the History Squad. Now, today's video has been voted in by my Patreon members. Hey guys, thanks a million. It's all about law and order and punishment in the medieval times. So without further ado, let's have a little look. Now, for those of you who don't know, I'm a retired police officer. I was a British bobby on the beat just outside of West London many years ago. Now, before then, I was in the Royal Military Police. I was an MP. Now, both training for those jobs, you had to learn the law. And I've never forgotten.
That makes sense.
One of the first things they told us when we were learning the law is, you've got to go back to Saxon times. You must understand about English common law. And that's where we're going, to the Saxon times, common law. Now, some of the crimes that you'd come across in the medieval times, quite straightforward. Drunken disorderly, disorderly conduct, poaching, thieving. And then you get to the more serious of treason, heresy, murder. The you can ask yourself is, how was the rule of law maintained in those days? First of all, they divided up the country. You had a thing called a tithing. So groups of 10 families, that's a tithing. And the man in charge of that, the tithe man, he was responsible for that little group of people, and minor crimes that were committed, they would sort it out. But then if you group those together, you will then end up with the 100 and the hundredsman. He would deal with the more serious crimes. And then above that, you have the Shire, this entire area of England. My home shires, I've got two, Staffordshire and Warwickshire. Now, on top, in charge of those will be the Shire Reeve. We know that as the sheriff. And he was responsible for the more serious crimes. And he worked for the king. So he was the connection to royalty. Now, if you committed a crime way back in the medieval times and you had it on your toes, you escaped, but there'd been witnesses. They saw who it was. The local constable, the sheriff, the Shire Reeve, or even the hundredsman. They would raise a hue and a cry. That is, they would gather local people and they had to obey, do their service, and they would chase down the criminal. This could be an extended chase that actually leaves the Shire and goes into another one. They had to pursue that person, the hue and cry. Another name for that is actually posse. And I love that because the old Western movies, the sheriff, we're going to raise a posse. It actually comes from the medieval England. It's a hue and a cry. So this whole business of tithings, hundreds, people being responsible for the law at a community level, I like that because it worked. But then, 1066, the Normans came. And they didn't quite know what to do with the law. So they had to study Saxon law. And this is where it all, in a way, kind of changes. So with the coming of the Normans, they brought with them the stronger church. They built their cathedrals. And these cathedrals, this power of the church, they had their own courts. That makes sense. But if you were a nobleman, a wealthy man, powerful, you can read, you can write. You've committed a crime, a serious crime, could even be murder. You could claim benefit of clergy. You could claim that you are actually a religious man, a member of the church. Some of them even shaved the top of their head, a tonsure there, and passed themselves off as members of the clergy. And the clergy itself had no way of proving or disproving that they were members of the church. But what this did was it put them under the control or under the protection of the church. And they will be tried by an ecclesiastical court. The death penalty would actually be off the table. The
Really?
ecclesiastical courts were far more lenient than the criminal courts of England. So there's a bit of friction here between the church and the king. The king is pursuing people. Maybe the sheriff of Nottingham, he's been a naughty, naughty boy. He has it on his toes and he decides that he's going to hide in a church. Sanctuary, you can't get him. He might even shave the top of his head into a tonsure so that he looks like a monk. They
It's
couldn't
kind of like
disprove whether he was a monk or not.
like when people do crime in intentional water or something. Like it's this kind of way to get out of your punishment, you know? It sounds silly thinking about it, you know, like someone kills someone, but then they dress up as a monk and they say that they want to be punished by the church and the government can't do anything about it. It sounds very counterproductive, obviously, I would say. But I guess that's how it works. Hello, Unfiltered.
So there was building friction. Also, if you were caught as a criminal, it was how you were put on trial in the early years. So the Normans have arrived, they're learning about the law. A guy has been caught thieving. To prove his innocence, trial by ordeal.
Ordeal.
So you plunge his hand into a boiling cauldron of water. You then take it out, bandage it up. And within 3 days, if his hand has begun to heal nicely, he's obviously innocent. His hand's still boiled, but he's innocent. You give him an iron bar that's been heated up to hold for...
I remember there's a TV show called Vikings, and at some point, there's some guy that does something like this. Like, I think he has to walk through fire or something to prove, you know, that he's protected by his god, or he has to hold like a metal bar that has been boiling hot, right? And obviously it gets burned, right? It's the kind of thing where like sometimes people like to say that, you know, we have this modern impression of like people being dumber than they were back then. But then I look at things like this and I'm like, I mean, how does you getting not burnt make you innocent? You know what I mean? And obviously, like everybody gets burnt, right? I mean, like except if you give them a cold iron bar, everybody's gonna get burned by it. So it's like you're automatically guilty. It just seems so like who came up with that? Some kind of sadist guy came up with that, and everybody was like, "It's a good idea," but other people even accept an idea like that. You know what I mean? I mean, I know we do a lot of dumb stuff in today's world as well, but it's insane to me.
Was it 9 seconds, I believe, or so many paces? And then he lets it go. Bandage up the hand. If it begins to heal in 3 days, it's a sign of his innocence. Or
In
drop
just 3 days.
a massive vat of water. If he sinks, he's innocent. If he floats, he's guilty. Have you ever tried to sink yourself in a swimming pool? You always come back to the surface, don't you? The air in your lungs. So the church had to monitor these ordeals, these trial by ordeals. But of course, if you were a bit of a nobleman, a knight, or even a man-at-arms, you're up there, you could choose to be tried by
the trial by combat.
And the winner was obviously chosen by God, and therefore he is innocent, and the guy who's lying dead on the floor was guilty, or it was a false call. This is early medieval. But as I mentioned, there's a bit of friction between the crown and the church when it comes to this legal side.
There's no stream before, but Apple wired earbuds. I have no idea. I've never used anything Apple, so can't really tell you.
Giving of sanctuary, these church courts being so
maybe they're
lenient.
good.
Thomas Becket and the King, Henry II, that is one of the famous flashpoints of this time. But I'm not going to go into that because that's going to be a whole separate film. But it just shows you how the crown and the church would clash. And it was the Pope actually stopped the business of the church being involved with the trial by ordeal. So now they
it's kind of fucked up
with a new way of doing things, and it will be trial by jury. And how they're going to do that? Because what actually develops is quite interesting. Up until 1176, which is over 100 years after the Battle of Hastings and the Norman invasion of Britain, law was still administered by your local lord or your communities. But now, royal judges are being sent out to the shires. And people were terrified of them. Can you imagine? You're in a little
No, it's
village.
stupid. And it seems to be a word that's about any little community, right? But the word Shire to me is just the name of the place Frodo and Sam and all of them lived, right? Like, I I guess for a long time I didn't know it was a word to describe a small community or something. I just thought it was the name of the place that they live in, the Lord of the Rings. And I am shocked that it's not.
And all of a sudden, yes, there's a judge is coming from the king. Why? What have we done wrong? Well, in 1233, there was a village in Cornwall got the news. The judge is coming. They were so terrified that the entire village had it on their toes and hid in the woods until the judge was gone. You see,
Okay.
people were afraid of this new kind of law, not so much of the judge, but the idea of being tried by a jury, 12 good men and true, and all of that. People didn't trust it. What if the jury doesn't like you? What
It's the
if
same
they've got
problem
an
today.
axe to grind? And so people, when they were brought up in front of the judge, right, how do you plead? They'd go, I'm not going to. And it was a big problem. Well, you've got to. No, I haven't. Now, I covered this in a previous video about Margaret Clitheroe, God rest her soul. But if you didn't plead either guilty or not guilty,
Oh, that
you would be put
torture.
to strong, hard punishment. Piene forte et dure. What it meant was this, that they took the front door off your house,
Of your house too.
lay you down, often with a stone up against your spine, and then they put rocks on top until you either pleaded, okay, I'm guilty, or no, I'm not guilty, put you to trial, or you simply burst. It
Yeah.
was serious business, this trial by jury. So right in the middle of...
It seems stupid, like, in a sense, they're a bit on the right way, right? Like, they get the idea that we need a jury of different people with different opinion to try to decide if someone's guilty or not. But then, if they don't want to do this, we just go back to literally forcing the confession out of them by killing them until they say, yeah, I did it. It seems like, it's still a very transitional period where they're very confused about how justice should work, It's kind of interesting.
all of this changing of judicial procedure in England, going from trial by ordeal to trial by jury. In June 1215, you have the signing of the Magna Carta at Runnymede down there, not far from Windsor.
I've heard of the Magna
It's
Carta.
interesting because some people say, oh, this was just a charter for the rich, for the barons. Well, 4 clauses out of the 63, if I remember correctly, are still on the statute books of English law. Now, 2 of them in particular are very poignant, 39 and 40. I'm going to read this. No free man shall be seized, imprisoned, dispossessed, outlawed, exiled, or ruined in any way, not in any way proceeded against, except by the lawful judgment of his peers and the law of the land. And the other one, clause 40, no one will we sell, to no one will we deny or delay right or justice.
Sell.
These are so vitally important. So the laws in the medieval time, many of them were left over from the Saxon times. And of course, your serious crimes like murder, treason, theft. But there was one, coin clipping. If you were clipping the silver off the edge of the coins to melt it down and make other coins, that was regarded as treason. And you will be hanged and burned for that. It was so important, actually, they changed the design on the coins. They used to have a very short cross, but this one here has got a long cross, so you can tell if it's been clipped. A very serious crime. But also you got your ecclesiastical crimes, crimes against the church, heresy and blasphemy, all of these. But the king himself added new laws by royal decree in 1198. King Richard I banned, outlawed the hunting of the royal deer in the royal forest. If you were caught, the punishment was severe. It was blinding and castration. So they cut off your genitals. The blinding, hot iron against the eyes would melt the eyes. Another one I'd read about was a hairy rope wound against the face, and that would actually pull the eyes out. That's absolutely horrendous. People were terrified. In 1209, there was Hugh the Scot had been caught, but he ran away. having poached the king's deer in the royal forest, and he hid in a church claiming sanctuary. And he stayed there, I believe, for about a month until he was able to slip out disguised as a woman, and then on his toes he had. Now, this punishment was very, very unpopular. And in 1217, the punishment was reduced to a year and a day in prison and a hefty old fine. So it's interesting, isn't it, how the...
It is one of those things where, like, I feel like the idea of an extreme punishment, like, you know, blinding someone and castrating them, is to totally dissuade anybody else from doing it. But at the same time, it's so extreme that it's like you're literally just, like, the person is just destroyed, right? I mean, now they're blind and now they're, you know, yeah, they're just done. I mean, they're literally like just probably a burden on society per se, you know what I mean? So it doesn't seem very worth it to do that. I don't know. It's kind of like the punishment in the days of like cutting hands and stuff like that. It seems like, you know, you're basically like dooming the person to not really be able to even work or something, you know? So I don't know. Yeah. Or with the Windows 10. I'm not switching myself, I think. I mean, I don't really care. I think I stay on 10 for now.
These laws affect people because some of those royal decrees are actually still standing to this very day. England, Wales, I'm not sure about Scotland actually. You are not allowed to catch a sturgeon or a whale because they are the property of the king or the queen. And in 2004, a Welsh fisherman, bless his cotton socks, was fishing away and he caught a sturgeon and was told, you can't keep that, that's the royal fish. So I don't know whether he put it in the freezer or what he did, but he contacted the palace in London there, Buckingham Palace, and offered the sturgeon to the Queen. And Queen Elizabeth, God rest her soul, she politely declined the offer.
Doesn't like
just
fish.
to show how the laws of the ancient day still affect us to this very day. Football was banned for years because of archery practice. If you were caught playing football instead of going to archery practice, that's 6 days in jail. And one that I really love is the weights and measures bakers. If they sold you a loaf, a penny loaf that was underweight, he could be fined and pilloried. And I'll talk about the pillories in a minute. So bakers were very nervous about, what if we shortchange? So there's a famous saying, isn't it? A baker's dozen. Because a baker would bake a dozen rolls and then he would add an extra one. 13 is a baker's dozen, just in case his weight was wrong. So some of the laws were a little bit interesting, a bit strange. I like the one for the archers, that if you shot somebody on the archery range as they were crossing and you were shooting, tough luck on them. You're safe.
Appealing to accidents.
There's one set of laws that actually blow your mind when you look back. They're called the sumptuous laws. And these were designed to keep people in their social status. If you're a poor guy, keeps you down there. Middle class, it'll keep you there. Upper class, hey. And it was all about, first of all, what you wore. Colours, certain colours you were not allowed to wear. Purple is one of them. Fur trim you're not allowed to wear unless you're of a certain class. But this didn't apply to soldiers who were in service of their noble lord, so they could display the different colours. And actually, when they were armoured up and going to war, these laws did not apply to them at all. But then he went further. It's the cut of cloth, the type of cloth. A poor man, if he got some silk, he's not allowed to wear it. But then fashions got a bit outlandish and long, pointy shoes. Some of the medieval shoes were so long and pointy that they had to fasten them to their shins or to their knees.
What's the point of that?
Was people showing off. I can afford to have all of this leather in my shoe. Look at this. And then they had the codpiece, which is the piece that covers the gentlemanly parts, shall we say. Now, normally, there's enough room to put in those gentlemanly parts. But young blades, they wanted to have them bigger, extend them.
Of course.
Well, it was ridiculous. So they fell foul of the sumptuous laws. But one of them that I really do love was the indecent tunic. Now, one of the problems being a medieval man was your clothes.
It's a bit better,
They didn't have suspenders or braces, as we call them in the UK. Your belts would often slip. So your hose, your pants, were laced in to a vest basically. But then if you want to go for a poop and you're in a hurry, you've got to undo the laces from behind. And I will tell you from bitter experience, it's not easy to do. So they left the back of their hose, their pants, undone. Invariably, just made of wool, they will sag down. Their linen shirts would sag up. So the law required that you have a long tunic to cover that up. If I understand correctly, there was a fine at one stage. If you showed your wobbly bottom in public, that's £0.50 fine. And I think that is brilliant. And perhaps there should be a fine in Walmart for wobbly bottoms being exposed, because I've seen a few, if you want the truth. Now, another part of this is 1336, Edward III. He was very conscious of gluttony, how the lower orders were enjoying lots of food. So he actually passed a law that you can only have 2 courses during the course of a meal, except at holidays like Christmas and Easter. Then you could feast as much as you like.
Insane. I mean,
it was always
it's like, it's the rich and powerful just being bored, right? So, like, the common people are enjoying too much food. Let's ban them from like eating, 2 courses or whatever. Or it's the stuff. I feel like some of the stuff like earlier, like if you shoot someone passing in front of you in an archery range, I feel like it's the kind of law that was only passed because some rich guy did it, and to get out of it, they just passed a law to say it was okay. This kind of law, they feel like that,
Attempt of those up there trying to keep those down there in their place. But who was it who actually went to catch you? Me as a police officer, I was a constable. So the sheriff, the sheriff, he will have a bailiff. The bailiff will go and collect the fines and forfeits, all of that kind of thing. The constable, at first, that was just a volunteer thing for about a year, I think. But then later on, you could be employed as the constable. That will last for 5 years. And his job was to pursue the criminals. Now, just interestingly, if you were summoned to appear at court, you'd pleaded, yeah, I'm not guilty, and they issue you a summons, and you have it on your toes, you're outlaw. You're outside the law. You can be captured, you can be killed. Now, outlaw is very interesting, because an outlaw was regarded, I read that, imagine they have the head of a wolf, you can cut it off because they are outside of the law.
You're literally being banished from society.
We kind of loop in with the barons,
That's crazy.
The nasty ones, the sheriff of Nottingham. They would often employ soldiers, men who were outside of the law, and they would use those men as their hired thugs. And the more I read about it, the more I realize that it was the poor people who used to get robbed the most.
Of course,
that's interesting, isn't it? The poor people are the ones who get robbed the most. So what punishments did they have in the medieval
I ain't saying anything to that.
You've been arrested, you're found guilty by trial, you're going to be punished now. Now, in the early medieval times, if you committed murder, you can get away by paying a hefty fine, which I find interesting because they were more interested in your money than they were in the punishment. But as the medieval period goes on, there are more and more people. So the punishments, you can be pressed if you do not plead. If you flip a coin, it's treason.
Still
and
happening.
The law wanted to make an example of you. So the punishment
Some things never change.
was quite severe. It could consist of you being hung, drawn, quartered, or hung and then burned. Some people would prefer you to be burned alive because it was regarded as one of the most serious crimes. If you have committed murder, straightforward thing, they will hang you. Now, apparently, each village and town had a gallows just outside of the entrance. It might just be a hanging tree, or it may actually be a gallows. Outside of Warwick, they used to have.
I really wonder why there was always so much creativity in how you kill someone. Like, if you're gonna kill someone, I mean, I guess it must just have been for the spectacle and the pleasure of things, right? I mean, these people actually enjoyed that, right? I mean, otherwise, just hang them or something every time, like stuff like burning them or pressing them with rocks or, quartering them, which is like splitting someone apart is like, I don't know. Do we need that? I know it used to be a spectacle thing, right? But man, I mean, I guess, humanity, right? It's built on an history of atrocities, so even in justice, atrocities was the norm, it seems.
Hill, where the gallows actually stood. But these two I find interesting, the stocks and the pillory. Now, the stocks were used for lesser crimes, such as being drunk and disorderly. They were a form of humiliation. The stocks often had wheels, so the stocks would be wheeled out into the middle of the market square where most of the people were.
Food fetishist punishment.
You can't escape, and the locals could have a good old laugh and jeer at you. Now, these were still in use in my county of Warwickshire till the mid-19th century, but they had to have a constable on duty to safeguard you. But if you were pilloried, your head and your arms are actually trapped, and you are at the mercy of the crowd. And many a person who...
If you've played the Kingdom Come Deliverance game, and 2 especially, at the beginning of it, you get put into another's, and basically the crowd just insults you, throws like vegetable at you and stuff like that. It's a weird, it's an humiliation kind of thing, I guess. Yeah, like you do a little oopsie and you get humiliated. I guess it's not the worst thing if no one throws like rocks at you or something.
Was put in the stocks, was killed because they would pelt you with rotten fruit. Well, that's what you see in the films, isn't it? This is the medieval times. Are you going to have very much rotten vegetables, or are they just going to eat it before it goes rotten? How about throwing a brick at him? Because that's what used to happen. This could actually be a bit of a death sentence.
I mean, I'm sure, yeah. If it takes one guy with a rock. Interesting position.
It was a backbreaker. If you were in there for too long, your back really did hurt. Branding was another punishment you might suffer as a criminal in the medieval times, together with dismembering, such as having your ear or your nose cut off, or your hand if you were a thief, and even your tongue cut out, or maybe being blinded or castrated. It's terrible when you think about it, isn't it? No.
It is really like, that's the one thing that really like feels weird, like, okay, do your murdering tortures, like, sure, but crippling people seems just counterproductive to society and all that, right? So, like, I'm surprised there was even such a widespread thing to cripple people. I don't know.
You imagine you're a nobleman. You got a castle, you got several castles. You commit a crime. You're found guilty of the jury there, you naughty boy. But you can actually pay to the crown a hefty old fine. Or if it's such a great
it's the same
fine,
today.
you can actually give a parcel of
if you're rich, you can just pay bail.
Or to the church. That's actually what they preferred because they're making money. But if you come down the line a little bit to the poor old farmer and he's committed a crime, he's got no land to give over. He's a tenant. He's got no money in the bank. He cannot afford to pay a fine. So he's going to pay through pain. He's going to be punished. He's going to feel the full weight of the law. If he's stolen, he's going to lose a hand, ears, nose, branding.
Justice.
All of those terrible, terrible things. And that makes me realize that in those days, for sure, there was one rule for the rich, one rule for the poor.
I mean, it's not different, right? I mean, I said I wouldn't, but I'll say it anyway. But it's literally like this today. I don't know if it's like this exactly in every country. I'm sure there must be some countries that are a bit more smart about the system, but it is well known, right? Like the system of bail, for example, tends to be that if you're poor, you're fucked, because even the lowest bail will be like a couple thousand or something, right? And most people, they don't even have like 200 of savings, so they literally don't have the money for it. While the rich, often like 5,000 is, like a little bit of what they get. It's, pocket change to them compared to you. So we see it all the time, right? I mean, like a normal person, cannot pay their way out, while rich person, like even if you, like some rich people, they get like a fine or bails of like millions, but it's only like not even 1% of their money, right? But if you do the same to like a normal poor person, even like 1,000 is like probably more than they can even come up with, It's still like that. Now, obviously, some of the system is still different today because bail is only a part one, then you must still have to do like a trial and everything, but yeah, some things never change. I mean, I'm not saying like, there should be no bail or something, but It's definitely a fucked system.
And when I think about it, I don't think that's actually changed today, do you?
Here we
One
go.
rule for them, one rule for us.
Here we go. He knows.
Well, I hope you
well.
enjoyed our little video there on law and order and a little bit of punishment in the medieval times. If you did, like, share, and subscribe. And if you'd like to support our channel further, have a look at our Patreon community. The link is in the description. Now, before I go, a quick shout out to some of our Patreon members. Now,
Al plaisir. Great video. Very interesting. I guess some of this I knew about. Some of this I definitely didn't know about, as I'm not an expert on England punishments, you know, not quite my field of expertise or interest, you know. It's a bit extreme, but yeah. Very interesting. It's a great channel, this one, again. It's the second video I watched by them, and I like it. That's my take. So good one. Good one, good one. And Drew, thank you again for the stream element donation and the request. Thank you.